meeting. Welcome all to our meeting, which seems like a month since we've been here, almost, right? First thing on the order of business, is there any disclosures of interest from any of the members? Seeing none, we'll move on to minutes.
Your worship, we now have council vacancy.
Yes.
Councillor Earl Taylor will publicly subscribe his declaration of office and oath of allegiance.
Perfect. Thank you. I, Earl Taylor, having been appointed to the office of councillor in the city of St. Thomas, do solemnly promise and declare that I will truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise this office to the best of my knowledge and ability. I have not received and will not receive any payment or reward or promise thereof for the exercise of this office in a biased, corrupt, or any improper manner. I will disclose my pecuniary interests, direct or indirect, in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III. And I make this solemn promise and declaration consciously, believing it to be the true and knowing that it is of the same force and effect as if made under oath. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, welcome, Earl. It's a tough group to join, but you're here. Minutes?
I have a motion that the minutes of the meeting held on February the 10th, 2025 be confirmed. Moved by Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? Carried.
Council will now resolve itself into committee of the whole to deal with the following business. First committee is Strategic Direction and Development. First item relates to the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement for the Encampment Response Initiative. I have a motion that report SESS 0625 relating to the agreement be received for information, and further that a bylaw be prepared authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next item relates to the former Balaclava school site and a declaration of surplus property. I have motion that report PRF 1025 relating to the declaration of surplus property for the former Balaclava school site be received for information, and further the council declare the former Balaclava school property to be surplus to the city of St. Thomas. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Next three items pertain to notice of a public meeting to take place by Zoom on actually the first one is February the 27th, which has passed at 10 a.m. and that relates to an application for a minor variance by Patrick and Muriel Farrell to permit an accessory building, a garage, with a height of 4.87 meters, whereas the maximum permitted height is 4 meters at 78 Myrtle Street. On council's next agenda, we'll provide notice of the decision as well. The next two items are notice of a public meeting to take place by Zoom from the Committee of Adjustment, and that's on March the 13th, 2025. The first one's regarding an application for consent by TKFB Holdings to sever a lot with a frontage of 20.952 meters on St. Catherine Street and an area of 69.3 square meters. And that contains the former Hydroelectric Commission of Ontario building at the southwest corner of 36 to 44 St. Catherine Street. The next notice relates to an application for a minor variance to permit a lot frontage. So there's a few lot frontage of 9 meters, whereas minimum semi-detached lot frontage is 10 meters, 6 townhouse units per lot, whereas the maximum is 4 units per lot, a townhouse dwelling residential driveway covering 51% of the front yard, whereas the maximum is 50% of the front yard, and a townhouse dwelling residential driveway with a maximum length of 51% of the front lot line, whereas the maximum is 50% of the length of the front lot line. And that relates to the development of 1 single detached dwelling, 20 semi-detached dwellings, and 26 townhouse dwellings in the Miller's Pond subdivision, Phase 6. And sorry about that, the actual meeting for that particular notice is March the 27th. Your worship, unless there are any further items for this committee from the members, we'll now move into community engagement and services. First item relates to the Elgin Federation of Agriculture request for temporary exemption of the animal control bylaw. I have a motion that report ES 0525 relating to the request for temporary exemption of the animal control bylaw be received for information, and further that a temporary exemption from section 6.1 of animal control bylaw 71-2011 be granted to the Elgin Federation of Agriculture to permit 3 pigs for educational purposes at the Joe Thornton Community Center on April 15th and 16th, 2025. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
What hockey team do they play for? Further questions or comments? Councillor Baldwin Sands?
Thank you. As the KCCA, Kettle Creek Conservation Authority representative on Western Fair, I've seen this display multiple times, and it's a very engaging display to be able to walk by and actually see how things are operated. So I'm very, very pleased to see them here and very pleased to support it. Thank you.
Excellent. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Unless the members have any further items for this committee, we'll now move into infrastructure and civic operations. First item relates to Center Street Phase 3 reconstruction tender award. I have a motion that report ES 0425 relating to the tender award be received for information, and further the council award tender 2025-002 submitted by PVX Construction Limited in the amount of $2,324,807.73 excluding HST, and further the council direct that a bylaw be prepared for its consideration to amend traffic and parking bylaw 45-89. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters?
Thanks very much, Your Worship, to Kevin. I'm glad to see the projects being phased. On the parcels of land on the north side of Center that the city owns where we already have parking lots, those parking lots are going to be able to remain operational, I take it, through all this. We're not tearing out work that was done 10 years ago. I see a nod positive behind, but I just want to confirm that with all the road construction, all those parking lots are going to remain operational and not dug up.
Mr. Teeleybeck?
Through the mayor to Councillor Peters, I've also brought our manager of Capital Works, Dan Copert, here. He'll be able to answer any of the detailed questions that you happen to have for any of the reconstruction projects. So Dan, if you want to come up and answer the question, that would be great. Thank you.
Good to have you, Dan.
Through the mayor to Councillor Peters, the parking lot off of Center Street by William Street and one by Queen Street, there will remain without being touched. We do have to take out, I think, the curb along the edge to redo the multi-use path that goes through there. So.
All right. Okay. Further questions? Councillor Herbert, then Councillor Wookie.
Thank you, Worship. It's great to see so many groups, constructions company applying for these jobs that we're offering. And if we look further in our agenda, the GN Group did win one. But my question is, where is the PVX Construction Limited contract or company located? That's just curious to see where they're from.
Good question. We'll ask Dan to come back and say, hey, do you have any idea where this company's from?
No, they're from the Exeter, London area, I guess.
Exeter?
Around the east side of London. So.
Okay. So while you're there, the second one, I won't have to ask it later on. Where's the GHN Group from?
Mount Bridges.
Mount Bridges. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Councillor Wookie next.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'd like to do this kind of public service announcement once a year anyway. one of the benefits of us having our act together as far as our budget goes is that we can get tenders out early. And in this case, this tender came back at something like $500,000 below the budget amount. And so I just want to say to the public out there that the mechanisms we have in place encourage this kind of savings. And I think the taxpayers would be very happy when they see the numbers we get for a lot of our construction projects because of that. So I want to thank the engineering staff for them having their act together to get those tenders out on the street as early as possible so that we do have these favorable prices, because in the end, it benefits us all a great deal. So thanks to the staff for getting that out early.
Thanks for sharing, Councillor Wookie. Councillor Peters.
Yeah, thanks. Just building on that Councillor Wookie's comment, Your Worship. I didn't do the math on all these, but any savings that are generated, do we have the ability to either Daniel or to Kevin, can we utilize those savings and potentially look at some other infrastructure projects, or what? How do we deal with that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Peters. So you'll notice that we'll have like a contingency amount for what ifs if that happens. Sometimes we run into big what ifs. And so that surplus that you're seeing of $500,000 on this particular project is kept in abeyance just in case until we know a little bit further. But what does happen is that helps us with our next year's capital budget, because we know we didn't need all of that funding in order to complete the project. So the answer is yes, but in a delayed fashion, not in the current year.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Next item relates to the Chestnut Street Reconstruction Tender Award. I have a motion that report ES 0325 relating to the Chestnut Street Reconstruction Tender 2025-004 award be received for information, and further the council award tender 2025-004 to Burnham Excavating Limited in the amount of $1,880,809 excluding HST. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Kohler.
Questions or comments? Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering if they could let us know what section of Chestnut Street this is, because in the writings, there was nothing indicating the area that they're working in Chestnut Street. Thank you.
Through the mayor to Councillor Gibson. So this is the section of Chestnut Street that's between First Avenue and Churchill.
Further questions? Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to the Smith and Forest Ave reconstruction tender award. I have a motion that report ES 0725 relating to the Smith and Forest Avenue reconstruction tender award be received for information, and further council award tender 2025-006 to GHN Group in the amount of $3,390,756 excluding HST. Moved by Councillor Wookie, second by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? If I can just share, I was at the public meeting. It happened last Tuesday night, and just to share a quick story, a lot of people were there visiting on the Smith and Forest Ave reconstruction, and I went next door to do mayor's update, and the first question I asked is, why don't you hold public meetings? So I invited them down. I don't know if they ever did come, but it's a great example of sometimes we can announce them loud and clear, but we don't always have participation. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to the Yarmouth Yards Rail Spur Line CN Rail Connection Approval. I have a motion that report ID 0125 relating to the Yarmouth Yards Rail Spur Line CN Rail Connection Approval be received for information, and further that the Executive Director of Industrial Development be authorized to sign the CN Customer Connection Form as attached to report ID 0125 and to execute any additional documents as necessary to complete the transaction. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Clark.
Questions or comments? Councillor Peters, then Councillor Gibson.
Thanks, Your Worship. I have to admit, when I first saw this on the report, I was really excited because I honestly thought we might have some leverage with CN to deal with Barwick Street Bridge and north-south access. And then I got into the details of the report and I saw that we're actually having to pay CN money. So I was really disappointed because I thought, finally, we've got some leverage over CN to get some movement on two real irritants that we have. But anyway, my hopes were dashed.
Well, we hate to dash Councillor Peters' hopes, but CN tends to do that to us more than once a decade. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you, Your Worship. One question. One paragraph, it suggested that we need to pay upfront, and then in the end paragraph, it said when completed. So I'm not too sure when we're doing this payment.
Mr. Lawrence.
Thanks very much. My understanding is it's at the end. So it's added up in time and materials, and whatever they spend on their materials on their property is what we have to pay in the end.
Great. Can I ask on behalf of Councillor Peters, can we just hold that until they reconnect the north-south route or the Barwick Street Bridge? Tell them to sue us. We've been doing this for 20 years, trying to convince them to do things for us. Anyway, that was just my comment, not really a question of you. Further questions or comments before I get worse? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Your Worship, unless there's any further items for this committee. I see
Councillor Kohler.
Thanks, Your Worship. I know we've had some reports come forward about the 5-hour parking on the street, which I definitely support, but I've had quite a few people contact me. Unfortunately, in the city, we do have some homes that were constructed in the early years that don't have laneways, and they currently are able to get on-street parking for overnight during the winter time, but many of them are allowed to park overnight for winter, but then they're ticketed throughout the day and they really have nowhere else to go for that. But as I said, I'm a strong supporter of the 5-hour parking for people that have alternate parking arrangements. But I was just wondering if we could, I don't know if it's a report or have staff look at it, that if people are able to get on-street parking because they don't have laneways at their homes, if they were somehow exempt from the 5-hour bylaw in front of their house, because some of them have racked up some pretty hefty parking fines for that. So just looking for if council has some ability to maybe ask for a report to come forward for that, to see if there's any way we can help them out. I know it's not huge amount of houses in the city, but it's still through the planning of the time they were able to construct now, and now they're running into problems with that. But see if there's support from council to have a report come forward that might be able to help these people out.
So you want on that same topic?
On the same topic, thanks, Your Worship. And I would be really supportive of that, because one of the calls that I'm getting are from neighborhoods, and these ones are in the newer areas in the southeast part of the city where because of the costs of living, multiple people are living in units and cars are parked for hours on the day. And the question that I had to me was, how often do the bylaw enforcement officers go by and go out and chalk a tire, et cetera? Or is it completely a complaint-driven process? Problem with complaint-driven, then one neighbor then starts pointing fingers to the other neighbor saying, you know, you're sending them out. So I would be really supportive, because I just dealt with another one on Axford Parkway, an Austin Mini that had no plates on it. The snowplows were going by and I sent it into customer service, but it was obvious that that car had sat there for a number of days just based on the pile of snow. So I'd be interested to know, based on that report as well, what the routine is of our bylaw officers out looking for problem areas, or is it just complaint driven?
Kevin, you want to help us with that? Then we'll we have more comments on the same topic? Great.
Through the mayor to Councillor Kohler, and I'm not entirely sure or clear on what it is you're asking for staff to report back on in terms of, we did bring a report last year on the 5-hour parking piece. Is this a notice of reconsideration of that report? Because I'm not sure what additional information we would be able to provide than other than what's already contained in that report from last April.
From what I remember from that report was either to get rid of the 5-hour parking altogether or not, which I'm, like I said, I'm in favor of the 5-hour parking. But we have some houses that currently have no laneway at all and no other option for parking. And we'll give them an overnight parking pass, but then ticket them in the daytime when they have no other option. So I'm specifically asking just for homes that are allowed to get on-street parking for overnight through the winter time because they don't have a laneway, to have an exemption for them throughout the day, but keep the 5-hour parking for the rest of the areas in there. But you know, the planning of the time allowed for that to happen. And, you know, I think what we could maybe do is help them out with that, but I don't want to see the streets turning into parking lots, that's for sure. But the same thing as Councillor Peters, I know we don't have enough bylaw officers to police it either, but it just seems like they're being pretty successful in getting the people that don't have the laneways, but then other areas they're not. And maybe it is because some people are calling and they're not calling in other areas.
Kevin, on the question of it's mostly complaint driven, wouldn't it be? It wouldn't, we're not necessarily always out there driving, but if we are and we see it, then it might be chalked and visited again later.
Through the mayor, to answer your question, it is a complaint-based process. We do proactively go out and do parking enforcement at the beginning of the winter maintenance season, especially after the first snowfall, to try to help get people back into the routine of the winter maintenance season. And I can share from that report from last April, about 70% of the parking enforcement requests in 2023 were from citizens asking for additional enforcement because of cars being parked on the street for too long during the day. They wanted us out there to do that. So there's a piece here, and I'm familiar with the individual you're speaking to, Councillor Kohler, and there are other options available to them. They just chose not to deal with those particular ones because it's too far for them. But other individuals are okay. So I'm not sure, again, what the content of the council report would necessarily contain compared to what was previously provided last April.
Yeah, because I'm not sure the individual that you're maybe referring to, but I know these people are on Mitchell Street that have it, and then there's some people on John Street, but there's multiple addresses throughout the city that don't have it. So I've been contacted by more than one, so I'm not sure which one, but yeah, unfortunately, maybe we can get how many addresses don't have laneways, but I don't think it's a whole bunch.
Right, and I would, you know, as I've shared with many people who have called me, shared with them, did you notice it didn't have a laneway when you purchased the house? But I get that we still have to find, they have to find someplace to park. Councillor Clark, did you have a part to add this before we?
I was just going to say that we may be needing to revisit this in the future with the number of infills that we have. And as Councillor Peters said, not always does the infill just have one person. They might be sharing an apartment. So then you get into multiple cars at one location. So it may be something that we're addressing again in a year or two.
Well, if I can ask the question, I know that Councillor Kohler's asked it kind of a couple different ways, but is this something we're asking Mr. Delavec's group to bring back a report to us about again? Are we asking for something different than we said yes to last time?
Well, for myself, I'm looking at specifically for houses that get on-street parking in the wintertime because they don't have laneways.
Right. So an overnight parking pass, how does that affect them if they're at their home? Right. Okay. Councillor Herbert on the same topic?
Yes, thank you, Worship. Just to follow up on Councillor Peters' question about the same car being there day after day and plowing snow and everything, it's getting buried. Is there any onus on the, the snowplow operators when they see the same car there day after day after day, and they just keep going to report there's a car there? Or is it strictly up to the bylaw officer to deal with those of the police?
Or anyone to call customer service, as Councillor Peters did, or you could do if you drive by it, or the neighbors, right? That's why we have customer service, but I'm not certain I need the snowplow offer.
No, I just wondered. He
Yeah.
sees the car day after
Yep.
day, so. Good thing.
Yep. I'm not sure I got an answer about Councillor Wookie.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think what's going on here is there's a suggestion that anybody that has overnight street parking should be entitled to park for more than 5 hours during the day
Yes.
on the street. And I'm thinking the second part of this is how many people would that impact? Like how many people have overnight parking passes that are in 5-hour parking zones? I'm going to guess that data would be available. And then if we could get perhaps that information back from ES, then we can make a decision on whether we think it's worth it to do that or not. I think that's what we're
Okay.
looking for. I mean, myself, I want to know whether, is this 10 people or is this 300 people? Like what's the landscape here looking like for our plows and everything else? So that's my best guess at what we're looking for.
So it sounds pretty specific, Kevin. If we could ask that specific question on this one, maybe when it comes back to us, we'll also look at it in a greater general way also again, but specifically homes without laneways, get winter parking permits. How do we exempt them of 5-hour parking? Can you do that?
I certainly can, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, is this for, this is for the winter overnight parking piece, right? For the 5-hour on-street?
Apparently it would have to be because Councillor Kohler is suggesting these people have a snow parking permit, right? But, and then does that work for the rest? It wouldn't be the rest of the year then. Councillor Peters?
The issues that I've been dealing with in the southeast part of the city are year round, of a vehicle being parked there 8 hours through the day out on the street or longer, like just constantly out there on the street. So my issue isn't necessarily winter. Mine is a 365er.
And I know Councillor Kohler, you and I have dealt with a couple of cases of exactly that too, almost abandoned cars on streets. That may be something different than someone who are allowing to park there overnight because it's winter and they have a permit. But let's do our best on the overnight on the permit, and then we'll look at 5-hour parking when that comes back, I guess. Is that okay with the team? We get this piece back and it's something we can discuss? Great. Was there a motion that was needed there, Madam Clerk, or we're just a referral to staff?
Your Worship, I believe council has referred for a report from the Director of Environmental Services.
Okay.
If there's no further items for this committee, we'll now move into corporate governance and administration. First item relates to funding sources for community center planning. I have motion that report TR 0525 relating to funding sources for community center planning be received for information, and further, the council authorize the creation of a reserve to be used to hold funds for the planning of a new community center. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments? I mean, it's a fairly good report here. Councillor Baldwin Sands?
Thank you. My question is indirect to this report.
Yep.
First and foremost, I want to thank for this to come forward tonight. I'm very appreciative of it. But my question is, on Friday, we just had the survey closed about the new community center. I was hoping Mr. Bray would be able to provide a council update on numbers of people that responded and at least a quick umbrella overview of how the survey went.
Mr. Bray?
Thank you, Mayor Preston. Through you, I believe there's over 2,700 results. And interestingly, as I mentioned before, Andrew Gunn, through one of his consultation projects, is doing a project with the high school. And he bundled this in with that project. So he had over 100 responses from a cohort of the population that normally would not have an opportunity or maybe the ability to become engaged in this process.
Good number. Councillor Herbert?
Thank you, Worship. Well, I actually have a couple questions, but I just got a new one here tonight. What are the next steps with the survey?
Can,
What are you going to do with it? Are we going to do
can
it?
we have, perhaps I'll suggest that Jeff come back and deal with that issue. Right now, we're on one that was about reserve funds.
Okay,
All right.
I'll ask it later.
If under new business, or if it's okay
bring
with
it under new
council, I'll
business.
go ahead and do it now if you're,
It's up to you.
Jeff, do you want to quickly tell us next steps? Or?
Thank you, Mayor Preston. As you recall, we switched up the timeline to address specifically the feasibility of an aquatic community center. So the next month, we're going to be compiling all the data that we've received, and I plan to do an interim report to council as to where we are with that. And then I'll provide an update there as to where we are and how we can proceed to finish the project on time.
Super. Councillor Baldwin-Sands on that one?
Thank you, and thank you for that. I would also like to say too, that members of this council, plus the committee, we also received a request from April Gazda in the department for some of the user groups.
Right.
If you would like to expand a little bit about what the user group survey has requested in the information.
Thank you, Mayor Preston. I wasn't part of that, so I can't answer that.
I might be able to, because Councillor Clark and I were at a user group open house today. So it's really asking user groups in the community and really everything from service clubs through specific early on centers and stuff today, to give their input, to say, you know, what's the city looking at? So I'll take Mr. Bray, and then I'll go back to you, Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
I can say that there was over 100 user groups compiled. I did review that, and we reviewed that with the consultants. So it's quite comprehensive as well.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin-Sands.
Thank you. And again, the user groups that I circulated and the survey itself also asked, how many hours would you use it? What would you be willing to pay? What services would you like to see in a new community center, et cetera. So it was a very broad, very in-depth report, something easy for the user groups to do. And hopefully we get a lot of information back from those user groups as we move forward with this project.
Great. Councillor Herbert, since I cut you off, I'll put you back on. Go ahead.
So, thank you, Worship. So my other question was, will this survey give us the opportunity to get some draft plans down? We've missed 2 federal millions of dollars because we don't have a location and we don't have draft plans drawn up. So that I think we need to get going on that so we can be ready when they drop another 20 million out to us and say, are you ready? You got some plans? Anyway, I'm hoping the survey does that. Now, was there a lot of positive results from around like Southold and Malahide? Were they all involved in commenting, or was it just specifically St. Thomas? So I asked a couple of questions there.
The user groups that were targeted were St. Thomas. I don't believe there was an outreach to the county. To answer your other question, that would be the next step of the project. To develop even conceptual plans would be a capital budget ask. So hopefully through this process, we'll determine where a facility can go. That's part of this. We may have to acquire land. This is undetermined, pure conjecture at this point. And then from there, we have to determine what type of facility is best fit for this community.
Go ahead.
Sorry, through the Worship. Would it be worthwhile now to have a town hall meeting on it where all the people can come in and say, hey, this is what we want, this is what we need, just to get people's voices on it?
I think that would be the next step. Once we determine that this is something that's required for the community, then there would be some community outreach to assist with that.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. I will return to the treasurer's report that we originally were discussing. It gave us some very factual and very good information on the creation of reserve funds. And now questions or comments on the actual report? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was disappointing to see that we could not use a vacant land tax to encourage people to sell those properties or make use of those properties for this project. I was wondering though, based on the information that we received, could we go ahead with a vacant land tax, realizing the parameters that were outlined there for us? Could it be used for other purposes, but would still get what we want, and that is the land being put up for sale?
Or making someone move forward. If I could speak on behalf of the treasurer, and I'll see he's making his way up, but if I answer it, you won't have to, is yes, but again, if there's a special levy put on a taxation of any property in our community, there has to be some benefit back to that taxpayer by what you're suggesting you're taking the extra levy for. A great example would be the DDB. The businesses in the downtown pay an extra levy, but that money comes to a fund that works as on behalf of the downtown merchants in the sense of beautification and marketing. So no argument from their point of paying an extra levy.
So brownfields, would that be an area where if we impose that tax and the money went to help those properties clean up their brownfield, would that be something that would be eligible?
Well, that would be the same person paying the money to clean up the brownfield if you're taxing a brownfield. So yes is the answer. Of course, you could increase the taxes on any property for a reason like that. But in the case of, I don't know, let's take the railway lands. Right? We could increase the taxes on the empty railway lands and use the extra taxation to clean up the brownfields, or we could let the owners of the property pay to clean up the brownfields, which they in fact would be doing with the extra levy. I'm not saying your idea isn't sound, but yes. But it's got to be specific benefit to the people whose property it is. Right? So I recognize what we're attempting to do, because trust me, we've been trying to do it for a number of years, and many other communities have been trying to do exactly the same thing and use a vacant land tax or a vacant building tax downtown to make it so that incentivize either sell it or build something on it. Right? But in this case, we're putting an extra levy on to create a fund. Right? That fund has to go to some benefit to the taxpayer. That's why the extra levy would be allowed to go on. Am I reading that right, Mr. Treasurer? You know, I'm no good at your job, so help me if I've gone astray. But as I read it, that's what it is. And so when we suggested, let's take empty property or vacant property and put an extra levy on it and put it into a reserve fund called community center, well, there's no specific connection between the empty property and the eventual building of a community center, other than it's great for the whole community. So, Councillor Baldwin-Sens.
Thank you. At the same time, we did also introduce the discussion about a tourism tax.
Yes.
So again, that may not happen in this budget cycle, but it's something that we can do moving forward to help with the community center project in the future.
Well, and I don't disagree. And the report here to us said, yes, we could easily do that, but it would right at the moment would likely cost us more than we would ever collect. So we have to go forward with the thought that these are of some value to us or future value to us, that we can also do it. But I thank the treasurer for pretty detailed on those two pieces as to what makes sense and what might not. So we're keeping your great suggestion on the gambling side. So we're creating a reserve fund, but now we'll have to find other ways to continue to stock it up. Further questions or comments on the funding sources for the community center report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to a request for free transit for the St. Thomas Elgin Job Fair. I have a motion that report ESO 625 relating to the St. Thomas Elgin Job Fair 2025 free transit request be received for information, and further, the council waive the transit fare for riders traveling to or from the job fair on April 23rd, 2025. Moved by Councillor Wookie, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Any questions or comments? again, from the chair, I may ask, I don't know if there's a way for us to at all track this, right? I love doing it because it feels good that we're going to get people out to a job fair and create more employment in our community. But I really would love for us to be able to say, hey, this worked or it didn't work. I mean, we're offering free transit fairly much the whole day to just about anybody who says they're going to a job fair. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. And I hope that there's some way for us to somewhat track that they took advantage of our free transit. And I guess I should ask the same question about our New Year's Eve free transit. How do we know it benefits us the way we want? But since there's no other questions, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item relates to requests from the Kinsman Club relating to the sale of fireworks. I have a motion that report TR 0625 relating to the Kinsman Club requests be received for information. And further, the council exempt the Kinsman Club from the fee provisions of Section 6 of Bylaw 23-2002 concerning the licensing, regulating, and governing of the sale of goods. And further, the council permit the Kinsman Club trailer to be parked on city property from May 23rd to June 21st, 2025. Moved by Councillor Kohler, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Further discussion or comments on the Kinsman's requests? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? Carried.
Unless there are any further items from the members, council will now reconvene into regular session. I have a motion that the recommendations, directions, and actions of council and committee of the whole, as recorded in the minutes of this date, be confirmed, ratified, and adopted. Moved by Councillor Baldwin Sands, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
We now move into petitions and communications. First item is a request for a proclamation and flag raising for Canadian Mental Health Week. I have a motion that the Council of the City of St. Thomas proclaim May 5th to 11th, 2025 as Canadian Mental Health Week in the City of St. Thomas. And further, that the Canadian Mental Health Association flag be raised May the 5th at 10 a.m. and flown for the week from May 5th to 11th, 2025 in the City of St. Thomas. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Next item is a request to declare St. Thomas Oktoberfest as a municipally significant event. I have a motion that the Council of the City of St. Thomas declare the St. Thomas Oktoberfest event proposed for September 20th, 2025 on Talbot Street, a municipally significant event. Moved by Councillor Kohler, seconded by Councillor Wookie.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
The next item is a resolution received from the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus regarding potential trade tariffs between the U.S., Canada, and Ontario. The next item is a letter of support received from the Optimist Club of St. Thomas for the installation of a sidewalk honoring veterans in the city. And the last item under petitions is notice received from Hydro One regarding the Energizing Life Community Fund, and the deadline for applications is March the 17th, 2025. Your Worship, unless there are any further items from the members under petitions, we'll now move into unfinished business of council. And seeing no items, Your Worship, we'll now move into new business of council.
Any new business from council? I've just been handed a very important note that the St. Thomas's 145th birthday is March 4th. Also Pancake Day, I think. So happy birthday, St. Thomas, tomorrow, and that dispels all rumors that the mayor is as old as St. Thomas. Any other new business? Seeing none.
We'll now move into bylaws. I have a motion that leave be granted to bring in the bylaws, moved by Councillor Clark, second by Councillor Peters.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
I have a motion by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Peters, that the bylaws be now read a first time, referred to council and committee of the whole, and read a second time.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
Thank you. First bylaw, Madam Clerk.
First bylaw is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on the 3rd day of March, 2025.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Bylaws carried. Next bylaw, please.
Second bylaw is a bylaw to amend bylaw 188-2002, being a bylaw to impose fees or charges with respect to recreation service matters.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Third bylaw is a bylaw to amend bylaw 50-88, being the zoning bylaw for the city of St. Thomas. This is to remove the holding symbol from McGregor Farm Phase 2A.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next bylaw, please.
Fourth bylaw is a bylaw to amend bylaw 50-88, being the zoning bylaw for the city of St. Thomas. This is to remove the holding symbol from Shaw Valley Phase 7.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Bylaws carried. Next bylaw, please.
Fifth bylaw is a bylaw to temporarily remove certain lands from part lot control, being lots 23 to 28, 34 to 50, and 56 to 82 on Plan 11M 261. That's in Miller's Pond Phase 5, Stage 2.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Bylaws carried. Next bylaw, please.
Sixth bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and Prespa Sales and Rentals Limited. This relates to a grant acknowledgement agreement under the Community Improvement Program for the property at 15 to 19 Flora Street.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Bylaws carried. Last bylaw, I believe.
Seventh and final bylaw is a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute and affix the seal of the corporation to a certain agreement between the city and His Majesty the King in right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. This relates to the Homelessness Prevention Program Encampment Response Initiative.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Bylaws carried. I rise to report the successful passing of 7 bylaws.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Peters, that the report of council and committee of the whole on the 7 bylaws be received and adopted. The same be read a third time, engrossed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed and numbered.
Questions and comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
We now move into public notice. First notice is hereby provided that administration intends to introduce a report at the March the 10th, 2025 council meeting requesting approval of an increased capital expenditure relating to the replacement of a fire department pumper truck. And the second, that administration intends to introduce a report at the March 17th, 2025 council meeting requesting approval of an unbudgeted capital expenditure relating to an expansion of the change room at Fire Station Number 1. And no notices of motion. Your worship, there is a need to move into closed session. I have a motion that this meeting be closed to deal with 2 matters of a proposed or pending disposition of land, 2 labor relations matters, and 2 personal matters about identifiable individuals. Moved by Councillor Wookey. Seconded by Councillor Baldwin-Sand.
Thank you very much. Before I ask for questions or comments, as normal, we will be going into a closed session of council. When we are finished it, we will rise back to open session simply to adjourn or pass anything that was done during the closed session. So for those at home, thank you for joining us. For those that were on streaming or on Rogers tonight, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the other side. Questions or comments on closed session? Seeing none, all those in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried.
Your worship, at this time, I have a motion that council rise from closed session. Moved by Councillor Wookey, seconded by Councillor Peters.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
One remaining item under open session. I have a motion that council approve the roster of committee appointments as outlined on March the 3rd, 2025. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Gibson.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried.
No further items under open session. At this time, I have a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Baldwin-Sands, seconded by Councillor Herbert.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, you want to talk about adjournment, Jim? I mean, how deep a question can it be? Do we have to go home now? No, sorry. No further questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We are done.